Okay, so I gave.
Okay. Thank you very much, Niba, for giving us time for Do Not Talk. This podcast series has been designed to develop an intellectual discourse among multiple people of different walks. So we have been contacting AI experts, marketers, educationalists, and I'm lucky to have one of the very passionate educationalists with us, Ms. Naba Mansoor. Ms. Naba has 14 years experience both in development sector and education. She has been working from classrooms to head office meetings, which teachers are usually afraid of. Okay, but her expertise speaks volume. And we'll talk about education, we'll talk about teachers' well-being, and we'll talk about how digitization is supporting education in a good way or in a bad way. So over to you, Ms. Naba. Can you please just give us an overview about yourself, and then we're going to begin with series of
Thank you
questions.
very, thank you very much for having me over, Babar. Both humbled and honored to be a part of your podcast. I've been watching some of your previous talks, and I really acknowledge you having me over and letting me talk about how I feel education is evolving in the market. Um, my relevance to the education industry was not very deliberate. It was more of circumstantial. But me staying in the academic industry is definitely deliberate. I moved into academic industry back when I was doing one of my roles in an out of school children's school. It was a development sector project. I was because my professional background is in training and development. So my that particular job role was related to training and development with a development project that was centered at one of the street children's. And somewhere that was the point where I found the knack inside me to play with to develop educational experiences in literally innovative ways. Maybe more because I saw the crudest of minds hold the maximum potential that actually we feel is not meant to learn, and how they learn and how they shape their experiences of learning actually introduced me to a very different aspect of education. And definitely that's from where how I got into this field, and I have been learning more, interacting with learners every day. Currently, I am related to the private sector. I do development projects sideways as well. So, but that initial hit that I had received to be a part of this came from the development sector.
All right, wonderful to know, Naba. One thing that we really talk about it, and I know it's not only about it's not a story of a developing countries. It's a story of every other country that we usually aim to and usually look for. Okay, because exams, unfortunately, are only meant for education, particularly only meant for grades, score, expectations, university placement, and they are linked with career. All right. Whereas the true aim of the education has somehow misplaced. All right. You can see on the pretext of on the pretext of quality education, we are pressurizing teachers. On the pretext of quality education, we are charging hefty amounts from parents. And on the pretext of quality education, we are making brands. And the brands that are working in Pakistan in the form of a lot of network schools, in the form of a lot of like network NGOs and INGOs. But somehow, don't you feel that the value based education, the truer sense of education somehow is missing? What is your take on it?
So, in my very core belief, when we talk about education, we are basically talking about deployment of utilizing the natural abilities that we have been given for our future growth. And luckily, Pakistan's constitution, the 18th Amendment 25A, it also talks about education as a basic right of every child from the age 5 till the age 16. So technically, our constitution has also incorporated the importance of education for our children. And us still learning to teach is the challenge. Pakistan altogether has 71 million students, out of which roughly 21 million are related to the private school sector, and 21 million is still on the streets. That almost equates both the sides. So, what we are doing is, if we have branded education in certain spheres, we have totally left education out. Not, we are not even hitting the bare minimum as a necessity for one sector is to get themselves educated. So this disparity is, yes, this is huge. But on the same, in the same circle, we also have a lot of educationists. Education industry has grown tremendously in Pakistan over the past 2 decades. And that means that we do have potential, we do have educationists, we have planners. Even the education industry has changed its shape from mere teaching or managing education to bigger roles like learning and development. We have a lot of L&D roles, we have learning managers. So this gap that still exists is because we have somewhere neglected the designing experience of education, not because we lack awareness. I believe we hold a lot of awareness. Pakistan has one of in world's top international boards at high school level. Pakistan has good academic curriculums at the middle school level. We have some best early year educational modules. So what exactly is missing, that designing of the learning experience to actually add enablement. What I said in the beginning, that I see education as deployment of enablement. That deployment of enablement is the design of that deployment is missing.
Oh, right. So that's how it is. The designing part is missing. So, how can we bridge that gap? What is to be done? Like the good part is at least we have identified a problem that is there, but how to address that problem?
Ah, yes, that's the real talk that we
Yeah.
should be doing, because you see, physiologically, when we're talking about different sectors of the society, the children could be different. The children in the underprivileged sector of the society, they could physiologically be different from the children of other sectors of the society, but cerebrally, they all deserve equal opportunities. They are all children at mind. They all have cognitive abilities that can be used to help them learn. One of the most progressive sectors, which right now is the private sector, we have overdefined and complexified our learning ecosystems. While over the past 20 years, I just talked about the reforms in the educational industry, we did have reforms in the educational industry, but these reforms have actually replicated those international standards which come with a lot of homework. We have just replicated them into our ecosystem where they were not very much relevant. Now, this redefined ecosystem actually puts the teacher at the center of the pressure, where she is expected to fulfill different roles. She has to, a teacher in the whole ecosystem of learning was the main focal person, but now she is the most suppressed person of that ecosystem. This is where the education is actually suffering. Parents have expectations from the teachers, students have changing expectations from the teachers, management have expectations from the teachers, society has expectations from the teacher. But what actually has happened, we as educationists know that most of the systems, I mean not all of the systems, but majority of the systems do not give the teacher the exact authority to teach. But me, you, anyone, they all know that teacher is the face of education. We all, when we have to blame, when we have to talk about reforms, and when we have to talk about building learning experiences, we always talk about the capability of a teacher. But sadly, the teacher's role has over the time period deviated from just a knowledge contributor towards a manager of different aspects in a learning environment. So, how do we still expect that that teacher is going to build an effective learning ecosystem? There is lesser authority at her end, she is overburdened, she is doing a lot of work which she is not relevant to. So in my observation over the years, if we really want to rectify the system, we need to rework this ecosystem with more defined job responsibilities for the teacher.
Okay, wonderful to know that. I really like your idea of importing system without modifications to a new one. That is what has happened over the past 30, 40 years. Okay, so what we do as of a private sector, this has an attraction for parents because they have seen those students who have been taught into those schools who have imported um, education system from another country, but that has worked. But when we talk about the foundation that is being laid in Pakistan for majority of the public schools, okay, that doesn't exist at all. If I talk about myself, coming back to this podcast, talking about so confidently about the issues, this is again I give credit to my school that I have been to. Okay, the reason was the same. Teachers, they were not as burdenized as they are now. Their job was only to um, teach, all right, but now they are into the multiple managerial roles, or clerical roles, I must say. They are maintaining registers, they are maintaining all those lesson plans that which they will never be able to follow. And though I'm not against lesson planning, but at the same time, doing lesson planning for the sake of doing it, that doesn't work. And maintaining a lot of unnecessary record, from attendance to assessment, okay, and not drawing any triangulation, and that all is being done without the support to the teacher. So the managers who are in the schools or in different offices, instead of they supporting the teacher, at times they are in a role of a monitoring. So I guess we need to develop that ecosystem that you were referring to earlier. That let's develop that ecosystem where we are supporting the educator, not monitoring. Because when you will monitor someone, okay, in that case, people might have certain apprehensions. Okay, so in that case of overdoing, at times you tend to do something which you're not supposed to do even. So this drops the quality of education instead of enhancing it. Okay, so we've talked about the right side of the education. Now let's move on further. Since you've been working in a development sector as well, okay, so how is your experience with the development sector is complementing you in your role in education sector?
Thank you very much for bringing this up. I always want to talk about how development sector sees academic initiatives versus how we in our daily lives, the conventional side sees education. So, while I was working with the development sector, definitely I met children from all walks of street life. A child who's a hawker in the evening time, a girl who is a maid in the early parts of the day, a man who assists his father with kabar, everyone who we see on the streets, and sadly, those we see begging on the streets. But when they're inside that classroom environment, they're the same people who we see in a private sector setup or maybe in a public sector setup. Like I earlier talked about, they are physiologically different because they are malnutrition, but they're cerebrally exactly the same that we have in our regular school environments. So, and one thing that I saw was, when I was interacting with those learners, was they attended the learning sessions for their values and impacts. They actually they could value education more than we do, more than the child in a conventional setup does, because for a child in the conventional setup, the education is a must to get. It's something that his family has always been doing. For a child in the underprivileged lot, education is a luxury. It's a luxury for him. That is his escape from doing what his mind is not made to do. And he comes here and he does something that suits his mind and his learning experiences. Just I'll give you an example. I used to have a child in one of the setups. There was a child. He had a very withdrawn attitude. I learned from his parents that his father worked at a graveyard and he used to spend his nights in the graveyard with his father. The child didn't speak. Unlike others in the same setup, he was very reserved, withdrawn towards showing his acceptance of the environment. But one thing, he never took an off from the school. He was always there. I could. relates that he wants to be here, but he doesn't want to acknowledge because he had an internal guilt of taking education as a luxury when his other siblings were not studying. Okay, so there was an activity that we did regularly in that setup was everyone colored, regardless of who they are, what level they're studying. There was a day in a week where everyone colored. That was a psychiatric proposed idea for everyone to leash out. Over the time, I observed that child from not picking a color to hesitantly picking a color when no one is looking at him, then picking up dull colors, and then finally, like 3 1 plus months, that boy colored beautifully. He chose colors, he colored confidently. That was the impact of slow learning we had on him. The environment allowed him to accept himself the way he is. He got himself emancipated. That was the true impact of education. When you're in the development sector, your roles are more realistic, I believe. You know that this child, I'm not building him as a future ready engineer. I'm building him as a future ready survival who would know that he is a human and he deserves everything that anyone else deserves. Private sector has a little bit of a different side. You have a lot of stakeholders in a private sector setup. Private sector parents are very over involved. Teachers are a lot activity oriented. Principals, managements are involved. There are different stakeholders approaching you for their to endorse their product or their idea with your students. So if I have to summarize this, if the development sector carries the impact, the private sector carries the awareness of the education. That is where the difference comes, and I always want children of the development sector to have that power that the private sector has.
All right, wonderful to know. Yes, that's quite obvious. Children in development sector, they take education as a privilege, though it's their basic need. That's quite unfortunate. And students who are coming to private sector and to different schools, they at times take it for granted. Okay, because their parents can afford to send them to XYZ school, all right, and they somehow feel that they have a license to do whatever they want to, as as to the teachers, to the management, to the school community, all right, and then there begins a rat race as well. That you and I, we both have witnessed people building competitions for the sake of competition. And then with the schools that are they talk in detail and out loud that we are a value based school. We ensure that values are being inculcated among learners. When we talk about freedom of speech, when we talk about tolerance, when we talk about responsibility, so I guess somehow all those values are just for their employees and labor, and by I mean labor, I'm referring to teacher particularly, that they are supposed to follow. But somehow we don't believe that those values and those norms that are being followed by the students, neither by the parent community, because ultimately when we treat it as a business, so client आपका hurt हो जाता है. ठीक है, so that is we need to put up more effort, focused approach towards values in education. One example that you quoted of a child, valuing the education, understanding it, and picking it up later. So how can we translate the same model in public schools and in few of the private schools? What can be done?
Okay, so talking about public schools again, something good we're hitting upon. If 46% of the population of the school going children is going to the private schools, the rest of the 54% of students are going to the public schools. There has been a recent advancement in the public schools that I always want to highlight. Most of the development sector projects, they are actually they're building the interventions in the public sector right now. Public sector schools, not the street children schools. Now what is happening? You go to say NXYZ area of Islamabad's public school, you will see three development projects working over there. Someone would have given the gadgets. One of them is teaching them how to use the dashboards. One of them is building two of their subjects online for the learning experiences. But the impact is not showing. So while in every time I get approached by a project that is doing something in the public sector schools, now I am very skeptical about doing that opportunity because I see that it might not be giving that lasting impact. Public schools have been enriched with the development sector's intervention a little bit unnecessarily. I'm telling you, there are three big names that are everywhere in almost all most of the earlier level public schools, and they have been there for the past 10 years. So where is the impact? I believe the public sectors are already enriched with government resources. The that huge dip in the system of the public sectors is because of the low utilization and the ill management of the resources, not because of the absence of the resources. So public sector schools are already well pitched, they're well taken care of. All they have to do is they have to manage the resources. So I never believed they need that extra hand of help. These projects should again be going to the street children's or the underprivileged community schools, because that is where, trust me, why am I hitting upon this repeatedly? See this. There's a child who comes to you in a development sector school, a street children's school. I can bet this is his first day and his maths is better than your convention school's grade 3 student, because that is what he does. He calculates what his father is earning the whole day. Only that he doesn't know what particular mathematical operation he is applying. He's very good with his division, he's smart with his multiplication. They're the genius mental maths doers. The only thing is that they don't know what they're doing. That is how you tell them, ये जो तुम कर रहे हो ना इसे division कहते हैं, ये जो तुमने किया है ना ये tables में आता है. So that is how you build that impact. Public sector is, I think, one of the sectors of schools where they are well taken care of in terms of initiatives, reforms, projects, curriculum unifying. The only thing I still feel the public sector needs to focus a little bit more on is the digitization of their resources. Instead of the development sector projects building their intervention with them, they can handle that digitization on their own and they're good to go.
Now, my next question was all about digitization, by the way. So you have just hooked that. Wonderful. Okay. So, yes, the digitization is very much needed. All right. And through digitization, you can actually create a better impact. All right. But the digitization that is currently happening, okay, what is wrong with that digitization and why it is not creating that impact that was expected? Do you think there is some lack of planning and research? Because unfortunately, what happens actually in one classroom or maybe in one meeting room, we think about or brainstorm an idea and then we begin to implement it with the help of approaches, with the help of different links that we have. But somehow, I guess R&D in education sector, research and development, is not being executed in its true letter and spirit. Okay, and that is perhaps the reason why the digitization that started a decade ago in multiple public schools is has failed to create an impact. Okay, so do you think the lack of research is one of the main reason, or the second thing is there are no proper, follow-ups. There's no proper reflection. There's no proper, framework on which it could be reviewed to see that is it helpful, because 5 years is a very good time to see if one project has given you fruits or not. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for bringing this up. This is another major problem I feel we are facing across all the sectors, private, public, development sectors. So what has happened post COVID? I think each business category of the market was very proactive with deploying digitization into their work environment. This happened the most in academic industry because we were the one that suffered the most and we brought in online classes. But sadly, all those arrangements proved temporary for us in Pakistan. That rapid adoption of online resources was just timely because there was no, just like you were talking about the lack of research, there was very little research. And what most of us did, most of good big private schools, not all, but most of them, they actually used the third party available resources to just fuel their temporary needs. That did not go a long way. As a result of that, a lot of schools that developed LMS have gone redundant. Their LMS is like an abandoned building right now because they had just created those LMS as a backup plan, and it was never a future for them. It was never a long term future educational experience for them. Now, also, a lot of institutes, when I see their digital zones, for them, LMS is everything when they're talking about digital education. They haven't explored digital avenues beyond that. And sadly, it has left them into a very narrow avenue where they cannot see how digitization should be happening or is happening globally. Go to any school's LMS. This is very unfortunate. Go to their courses, you'll find nothing. All you'll find courses that they had imported from some other platform a few years back, or maybe something that they made themselves a few years earlier from now. Whereas I think in Pakistan, we do have climatic uh, problems now. We have uncertainties in terms of weather now, like international world already does. Internationally, there are issues. Snowfall, you go for online schooling. You go for the online schooling. We almost are in the same zone now, but we haven't understood that we need to build digital schools to be able to take our children into that loop of proper schooling. We are still missing on that domain. I think another thing I have repeatedly seen schools talk about, they can interchangeably talk about digitization and AI. For them, they are both almost the same things. For schools, AI is all about ChatGPT. They haven't explored it beyond that. I just recently heard someone talk about AI as a nuisance for students because they can copy paste their entire homework from the AI because we lack research. For us, AI is all about ChatGPT. We were just a few minutes earlier, we were talking about the overburdening of teachers. Isn't AI a rescue for the teachers? AI boards are actually made to be there on the classroom's big screen so that they can assist the teacher in the classroom environment where the teacher could be more human. I believe machines are there to assist us to be humans, not to take over our jobs. Or no, a machine cannot replace a teacher. This is very clear. Talk to anyone, they would fear अगर हम क्लास में मशीन या AI बोट ले आएंगे तो फिर वो टीचर वाला इम्पैक्ट कैसे रहेगा. The teacher's impact would stay there. Machines cannot replace educationists. They're just to assist the teacher. I believe schools by now should have designed their own AIs which were locked on certain domains and which were opened on certain domains so that we could keep the creativity intact and help the student amplify their learning experiences. Our students are still referring to the open source market available AIs, and that is where their creativity is ceasing. So, yes, we need better frameworks and we need to design our learning experiences with how the world is moving.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes. So instead of importing the current models, we need to modify them. We need to customize them to meet the needs of our learners. And when you talk about, schools have developed applications, schools have developed multiple LMS, but that those all LMS and applications are so redundant that you can find it for every other school. Okay, and maximum it has actually the resources the teachers are teaching. Maximum it has the attendance, fee challenge, all right, parent feedback. These are just six different tabs that you'll find on the LMS. Whereas,
Also, you would find very lesser utilization of these aspects as well.
yes,
Parental feedbacks on these portals is, I think it was very valuable if used to design your interface or to rectify the system. It's it's hardly the feedback is hardly even looked upon by the systems.
yeah, and it's more of a database actually. So it's just like you're storing everything in a cupboard, you know. पुराने कपड़े, पुराने जूते, पुरानी बातें, ठीक है, but impact is not there actually. So because with all that storage in that application, you won't be able to produce creativity. Okay, yes, I agree with you on that point of view. So but when you say develop customized things, but that requires a lot of money, that requires a lot of investment. Okay, so how can we, you know, do we, are there any solutions which are economical, all right, for different environments? Have you worked with someone which could actually support people to schools, administrations, public sector, or do you have an idea how can we make these more viable and economical?
Okay, so we are right now in a dense startup culture in Pakistan. We have a lot of startups. The youth is up with a lot of innovative ideas with utilization and deployment of digitization and AI. Each 6 months, each incubation center is at least fueling 5 to 6 big projects from the Pakistani students, which bring in new ideas about how we can implement AI and digitization into uh, everyday experiences of the students in the schools. So I think we have to do is like we were just talking about the absence of research or the low relevance of research we have. Another problem, we are still worried about unifying curriculums. We are still worrying about it, fitting the curriculums in with a single viewpoint or going international. We haven't realized that the urgency and emergency of education has shifted from the curriculums towards the digitizing of the curriculums. And we do have people, we do have funding agencies, we have people who are already working on this. Just visit the nearest incubation center in any metropolitan city and you would for sure find 3 to 4 big projects which have a solution to things that we are facing, and they would be very much happy to build more customized solutions for us. The problem is that the schooling block has limited its exposure towards working within its own people and blaming a few contributors of the ecosystem. If we grow beyond those walls, definitely there's a lot of solution available.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, that's very good. By the way, with incubation centers, my experience with one of the incubation center in Islamabad had been really good, where we were trying to build something, and those startups, they actually help you a lot, and they are not only practical, they are also quite economical. बट वो पॉइंट वही है ना कि मेरे रिश्तेदार की सिफारिश, ठीक है, मेरे रिश्तेदार की कंपनी, एआई की कंपनी, और उसने उसकी कंपनी में गोरे काम करते हैं और उससे प्रोजेक्ट उठा के लेके आ जाना, ठीक है, और उसको बताना कि एआई के टूल के साथ दे कस्टमाइज जो लर्निंग, दैट हैज हैम्पर्ड, और देन इट गोज विद द रेस, भेड़ चाल चल जाती है। एक स्कूल ने किया, वो एआई मॉडल लेके आए, then the other school, and then the third school, and then the fourth school, and then this is how they are in a competition. But in that entire competition, the actual essence is missing. Take care. Yeah. So, but we can give head all to all those incubation centers. Those are working. I guess this is a time that youth must be trusted. We must trust.
Both must be tested. Also, some of the international boards are going on screen. Some have already totally gone on screen for their final examinations. Some other well-renowned are going on screen 2027, 2028 onwards. So this is actually like we were saying, there is the urgency to develop that on those online modules for
Yeah.
the facilitation of our students and the learners everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. With that, I would like to thank you, Naba, for joining us. We had a wonderful discussion on multiple aspects. So I must appreciate your time, and I'm sure our viewers are going to have a lot of, you know, a lot of insights into industry, and it's going to be beneficial for our viewers as well. कुछ ना कुछ takeaways
Thank you
होंगे
very much.
उनके लिए भी,
Definitely.
हमारे लिए भी. I learned a lot from you today. Thank you very much for your presence. I truly appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you very much for having me over. Likewise, learned a lot from you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Take good care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.